Hi, Michael. Thanks for coming to my show.
Yeah, glad to be here.
I've gone through your profile. I can see you're working in Microsoft for more than 22 years. So, I thought to tell about you and the work that you're doing, some of your experience to my audience.
Sure. Yeah, and feel free to jump in, ask questions, whatever. Mike Gannotti. I'm a principal technology specialist at Microsoft, and I focus these days. I'm focusing on Microsoft Viva, which is Microsoft's employee experience in the cloud set of technologies. Works with on top of Microsoft 365 and enables employees to do stuff all through Teams. But I've been here, like you said, I'll be here 22 years. Next month will be 22. And, long time. I started, with SharePoint way back, Microsoft SharePoint as a technology. And, my background's actually, elementary education. So I was a school teacher. I taught English for 8 years in Southern California. And while I was a school teacher, I got the computer bug when Windows 95 came about. I was a Mac user at the time. I taught in a school with all Macs. And I went to a big trade show they have they used to have in Vegas every year called Comdex. A couple of the teachers went, and I met with some Microsoft people there, and I was like, they were super friendly, super helpful for stuff we were doing at the school. When I left, I came home and I told my wife, I said, I want to work for Microsoft someday. And my wife laughed and said, you're full of crap. You've never even taken a computer class. And so that year I built my first computer. We applied for a grant for my school because it was a migrant ed school. We had very little money, but myself and the computer ed teacher, we bought parts. We built computers for all the classrooms. We networked the school, started doing Microsoft streaming technology in 1996 on NetShow, and we would have student announcements that we had the video card was an ATI, I remember. Had video input from the old, tape cameras, but it had video out, and we would plug it in, and the kids would do morning announcements from the computer lab over Microsoft NetShow to the computers in all the classes. And then I became a mentor teacher, started teaching how to integrate technology in the class. I did that as a side part I was still teaching English during the day. And then I applied for a job in Philly that my wife's best friend let her know about. And I became an instructional web designer for a company called Intracore. And I was building web-based training with video and all this in 97, where it would have, I built a system using Microsoft NetShow for video. I was using Adobe Shockwave to drive animations for the nurses all around the country, and Microsoft Chat in the bottom. And I had NT servers, and I would do training for them remotely from Philadelphia. After that, I got recruited by Vanguard Mutual Funds, and I worked on their internet. They had a project to start an intranet in 98, and I got asked. I was on that project, and one day I came out of a meeting, and the head of architecture for Vanguard came to me and said, I want you to be corporate systems architect. You're going to be in charge of all the back end systems here. And I was like, what are you smoking? Are you smoking pot or something? I said, I have never even taken a computer class. I said, I'm not an architect. And he said, well, you're an architect. Everything, when you keep getting up and saying we should do this, and you're showing how you're connecting this system to that system and calling this, he said, that's architecture. And I said, dude, I'm not an architect. He said, whatever you're making, I'll give you a $10,000 raise. So I said, I'm an architect. I'll be an architect because I had a family to feed. And as an architect, they had a project for collaboration called the Work Group Web, and they had a group of Java developers had worked a year on it and nothing. So my boss said, "Hey, you're Mr. Microsoft. Do you think you can build something on Microsoft tech?" So I actually built in my attic of my house. I had a computer set up, and I had an MSDN Microsoft Developer Network subscription that I got. I went to the Microsoft offices and I met a woman named Audrey Purcell, who is a sales rep, and I begged her, and she got me the subscription for free. And I built a system using, at the time it was Microsoft Exchange 2000 beta. It was still 99. It was the beta version. I used that for something called the web store that was underneath to store documents and metadata. I used Site Server for web pages and search and indexing. And then I layered on a thing called the SQL Digital Dashboard that gave you web parts. And I had like different controls for Microsoft. It was back then, I think it was Communicator or whatever. I forget the name of it. But all the different things. So you could see people, you could look people up, you could see information. You could actually start a meeting like this with somebody. And this was 99. And you could share documents and be working on them. And we showed our CIO and he's like, that's what I want. So we went to Microsoft offices to contract them to build it and support it. And one of the consultants, a gentleman named Gary Gross, pulled me aside during a break and he said, you don't want us to build this. There's this thing. It's like exactly like what you're doing that they're working on. It's in alpha, and I think they're going to call it Tahoe. And so we got on the early trials, and I had weekly calls with the product group. It's what became Microsoft SharePoint. And 2 weeks after that was there, I had let them know that I wanted a job. And they called me up and said, do you want to come work for us? I was like, yes. So that's how I started. That's how my kind of stumbled my way from teaching and technology. And since then, I've been working, it's always around areas that are enabling end users, making it easier for people to collaborate, share things, work together, I call it taking the mojo or the magic out of the little bag that IT likes to hide it sometimes and say, we'll give you this little bit now. I'm like, no. Here's how you can do this easy. Have a go at it. And so that's my job, to help end users and make things easier.
And now you are helping the Microsoft in understanding how employees are thinking and feeling about cloud and Microsoft 365.
Yeah, so I work with customers. I'm in our healthcare and life sciences division. So I work with the large pharmaceuticals of the world. I work with the large hospital chains here in the U.S. I work with insurance providers and others, and I help them on how you can improve the employee experience. So, across things like how are people feeling and doing, so that you can proactively start to see, are there problems that we need to address, and so that we can help employees to have more satisfaction, to feel work, better in their job, et cetera. It also is around how do you communicate, how do you engage employees. I do a lot. I've been doing streaming and video, like I said, since 96. And so I do a lot of work on how to enable that and combine that with learning. So I use my teaching background and helping and showing how you can do things with audio and video, both inside the enterprise to enable people with just-in-time learning. So it's a lot of that, but it is focused around our Microsoft, we call it Microsoft Viva suite. And there's a whole bunch of modules or little products in it, and that's what I cover. And I help them to see how they can use it in their workplace to make work better for employees.
Uh, and you are the evidence for the evolution of the Microsoft technology. You know what happened in this 22 years, how the technology helping human being in different ways. Like you
Yeah.
said, it can be pharmaceutical companies or it can be
Yep.
any companies that you work for. So where we are, how much we developed.
Yeah, so it's come a long way. I mean, a long way, right? So, uh, early on things were pretty, you know, I'll just say they didn't scale for large audiences at first. It was more still, the desktop, an office on the desktop, um, and people would put documents up in a website in SharePoint, but that was the extent of it. People would share stuff, make it easy to access and work with it. Now, but everybody still had to come into the office. You still needed to be able to sit down in meeting rooms with people to do things. Over the years, that's all slowly changed, especially as we went to the cloud. And when we got Satya Nadella as our CEO, that's where we had a big, big change at Microsoft, because prior to that, you still had a lot of the teams would compete with each other. So it wasn't always necessarily the best technology that would win, but the one who had more power. I'll just say that. And but under Satya, the company has really changed. So we talk about having one Microsoft. We're all, I may work with healthcare, but I help people in education. I help people in financial services, uh, oil companies. I've helped out. I've even done presentations to the U.S. Department of Defense and to a bunch of generals and colonels and stuff. So, we try, it's one Microsoft. We're all working together to try to do the best we can. And our mission from Satya is to enable everybody on the planet to be more productive eventually. And so that extends to, like I have an iPhone, but before I jumped on this morning, I woke up 5:30. I was up making coffee. I was on through Microsoft Teams on my iPhone, working, communicating, collaborating already while I sat in my chair sipping my coffee, trying to wake up. And, so that it's changed. And now, like, for example, I'm sitting in my home office here. I don't travel. I never travel, but I have meetings with customers. Whether I've had to delay this several times. I have meetings all day, every day. And, that's, we can be just as productive wherever we're at and meet and work. And, yeah, that's the big change, I think. This idea that you can work from anywhere. Certainly there's jobs that you have to come in. Like I work with doctors and nurses and other clinicians. They have to be there, right? Because they have patients. But we also, at the beginning of COVID, one of the things that myself and my colleagues were doing, we were working with hospitals to help them set up telehealth so they could do stuff remote, even with patients. So the world's changing a lot, and sometimes it's what they want. People want to move towards. Other times it's kind of they've been pushed, but it's definitely changed a lot. In the cloud, which was Satya's vision, that instead of selling software and installing stuff on servers, we would have subscriptions in the cloud. That's changed everything.
Uh, I can see there is a diversity in the work that you are doing because you are connected with a lot of industries through Microsoft. So how you are able to adapt yourself to anything that is new?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a saying here at Microsoft, you're a forever learner. We're always learning. And anybody who wants to wants to work at Microsoft, they better put on a seatbelt, like you're in a car that's going fast, because the one thing things will change tomorrow and there'll be something new. So you're constantly having to learn. I have a manager who's super supportive, uh, and my whole management above her is very supportive. We have learning days. That's how I was able to do today, with you. because today is, even though I do have meetings that are interrupting that, we bucket and we block off learning days regularly so that you can take the time and go. And like yesterday, I had to build something for a customer, and there was a bunch of stuff I didn't know how to do that I knew they wanted to see. So I had to teach myself as I built it. I'd be, okay, what do they want? And then I learned. And so that's how I mean, as a technologist, that's what we tend to do is, it's people who learn doing. Um, but always learning because it's always changing.
Any particular project that you worked and you felt very happy?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them. I'll say like, in the beginning of the pandemic when COVID started, uh, I remember being on a call with a customer, um, and I was living up in Pennsylvania at the time, but I was on the call with a hospital, and there were literally doctors on the call screaming, like, we have to have telemedicine. They're going to shut down the schools next week. We just got word. Everything's shutting down. We don't have telemedicine. And that wasn't the only one. I have many customers, the same thing, but I just remember this one call in particular, and they were frantic. And so, it wasn't just me. We had a whole team, right? That one Microsoft. So we had people from the Microsoft Teams group, from the product group, engineers getting on the lines with us because telemedicine as a part of Teams, Microsoft Teams, didn't exist. We were saying we were building the plane as we flew, right? We were figuring it out. And, so that for me it was awesome because we all came together. We were able to help out, customers to actually save lives and do it in real time. And so that for me was, it was very rewarding, very tiring because we were on calls all day and all night, right? So the very long hours, very tired. But it was very satisfying because we were able to do that and help people and provide them what they needed at the time they needed it.
You are collecting the information of customer experience, also the employee experience. So with that experience, with that information, how you are able to put in developing a product or giving the best service?
Yeah. So on my end, I work with, we connect, like I have one customer, we have a weekly call with engineering. The customer, it's a very large customer, myself, and then the engineering team. And they go through and say, hey, we're trying to do this with it, but it won't do this. And they'll say, okay, what's the business reason you need to do this? And we'll feed that back, and then they'll put it into their development queue if they think it's appropriate. We do status updates and stuff. But I think with the whole, we do direct contact with customers. There's also all the telemetry we get from how customers are actually using, which is important because one thing that, we're very data driven at Microsoft. We don't just build stuff because we think it'd be great. We build stuff because data shows it's what people want or trying to do or need. And a lot of times we'll get on calls where, somebody might say, well, this is what we really need, but it's their personal opinion. When in fact, in the org, if you look at the data, and like they'll say, we don't use meetings in Teams. We're only using it to share documents and all that. And then meanwhile, we're pulling up, the reports and we're saying, well, actually, 95% of your organization is using Teams meetings, 6-7 times a week. So that tells us, you've had X amount of meetings and all that. Actually, that is what people are looking to do, and they are doing. And so that's all important because as we look at how people we get the data, but we also do talk to the customers. We involve engineering with key customers who give feedback. We have programs that are early development, like some of the new features in Viva that are coming out. I have customers, they're using it now before anybody else sees it. And then they're giving feedback a couple of times a week directly to engineering and saying, hey, this works, this doesn't work, this is great, this is stupid. And then they're taking all that feedback from the different customers who are doing it. And then they come back, they meet and they go through and they say, okay, this would be we definitely need to change this. We should add this. This is not as useful as we thought. Let's pull that. So that when the product releases, it's more in line with actual real world usage and how people want it.
The age of the technology is more than 50 years, and you are into technology from more than 22 years.
Yeah.
So you know how our technology improved. Are we fast or still slow? Because we came to a place where we are able to solve the problems of human beings with the cloud.
Much faster. So we were on, going back to my point about Satya moving to the cloud. Before that, it was every 3 years we'd get like when I was doing SharePoint. Every 3 years, we'd get a new version. Then the customers would want to see it, and we'd go on site and install it on servers. But change was much slower because you had to come out with a new product. You had to build the support, make sure it would fit on all the hardware. In the cloud, all that's abstracted. So they can literally, again, that's why I said like the pandemic was a great example. They were putting changes into Teams to help with telemedicine and all that, literally each week, several times a week. And I was on what they called the canary build, right? Very early build of Teams. I was getting updates sometimes twice a day. That meant there was changes twice to the product that day that they were rolling out and testing. You got the changes. You may get a service pack a year into a product in the old days when it was software, but now they can literally change on the dime. So it's constant innovation. It's no longer, SharePoint 2013, now 2016, now, it's just Microsoft 365. And we call it evergreen. It's always changing. It's always new.
And solving problems for different industries in your career, what you learned?
Well, I think one thing that you learn is every industry thinks they're different. And there certainly are differences, but they're much more alike than they are because in the end, it's all about the people, right? How do people work? How do they communicate? What works? What doesn't with people, right? It's not about hey, we're providing healthcare. Hey, we're refining oil. Hey, we're, running banks. People still work and communicate as people. And that's common across. So there's much more in common. But everybody thinks they're different. And I get that. And there are differences in regulations and other things. So, while we have to be cognizant, and that's why Microsoft, as an example, like when I started, we didn't cover an industry. You covered a geographic area. So I covered in the kind of the Northeast United States. Then I was an architect in our technology center, and I covered the whole East Coast as a part of that. And I covered all kinds of customers, right? But now we've moved to verticals, what we call verticals. So healthcare, manufacturing, finance, and all that, so that we are deeper in the particular. So when we first started healthcare, I remember walking in to a meeting, and the first thing, do you know how to spell HIPAA? And I spelled it wrong. And, they were like, oh, you don't even know our industry. But it became apparent very quickly. People want you to and that is important because now that we're in verticals, I'm able to learn much more about how clinicians work, which is different because like a doctor, a nurse, they're not on a computer of their own. They're not sitting in front of a screen. They're in front of patients. They're putting data into a, EMR system, a medical records system. Their only access typically is here. So, those are some of the differences. And so that's the good thing with being in an industry focus. You get to the areas where it is different, you get to learn a lot more about how they work so you can be more responsive to them and their differences that they do have.
And how you look at problems that you face.
They're challenges. It's never a problem. It's a challenge, right? So, how can we solve this? Can it be solved? Is there something that can be solved? Is there something better or isn't there? You just sit back, it's always, for me, the biggest thing is when customers come to us and they're like, we need the following. I always say, okay, let's not design the system yet. What is it you're trying to solve for? What's the challenges you're facing? Let's talk about that first. Then let's talk about maybe some approaches. Then let's look at the technology that's appropriate. So it's always, I call it discovery. We use that. That's when I was an architect at our technology center. Every meeting that was on the agenda for a half hour, and sometimes discovery lasted all morning. And the customer would be like, that was the best part of the day. I didn't even realize that we were thinking about this or this. Because you get everybody in the room that was, involved from different areas, and suddenly they'd really uncover what's the true nature that we're trying to solve for. So I don't look at it as problems. For me, everything that they bring to us, it's a challenge as to what's the best way that we can help. And sometimes that's to tell them, you know what? I'd like to tell you that this thing that we're selling you is the best thing for what you want to do, but it's not. And what you're doing is better. And that, as a technologist, I get to say that because I'm supposed to be their trusted advisor. Doesn't always make salespeople happy because they're like, well, I'm trying to sell this. It's not going to help them. And then they're going to be upset with us. We need to be truthful, and let them know this won't work. This is, what you're doing here, or maybe there's something that's better.
A particular challenge or particular experience that you cannot forget in these 22 years?
A particular experience, yes. My favorite experience of my Microsoft career was 2009, and it was the SharePoint conference in Las Vegas. And the Microsoft Office, at the time, I was doing video series. At the time, I was doing a lot of social media, a lot, as a part of my job. And I was the 5th most followed entity for Microsoft on Twitter. So it was Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, Xbox, Major Nelson, who was the evangelist for Xbox, then me, and then other products and stuff. And so it was crazy. But it was a lot of fun. And I was doing videos. One of my video series, I used to teach Iaido, the sword, Japanese sword. In fact, I still have my sword over here. So I started dressing up in my Iaido outfit, and I was the SharePoint samurai. And I would do videos on how to use SharePoint and people would email me problems, and I'd do a video, and I'd act goofy and swing my sword around, and this is a SharePoint samurai. Today we're going to talk about this. So the office team flew me to Vegas and had me dress up every day just to walk around and meet people and take pictures with people. That was a lot of fun. That was, I got to say, the most fun I ever had at work. That and one time I got to keynote. It was the Office launch in 2007, I think. Yeah, 2007. And I was the part of the opening keynote on stage, and there was a stadium of there were thousands of people, and the marketing team was saying, now when you're there, you have to follow the script, and stay on task. Do not get off the stage. I had brought t-shirts with a gun to shoot them, like a t-shirt thing, boom, and shoot them. Then you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. And when I got on stage beforehand to talk to Bob McDowell was the executive. He and I were doing the opening keynote. And he said, you do what you want. I was like, yes. So first thing I did was jump off the stage when we started. I ran down the aisles, high-fiving people. Come on, get excited. Jumped up on the stage, and then I'd ask a question and somebody stand up and I'd shoot a t-shirt out. And I told him, beforehand, he had asked me, why do you want to do all this stuff? And I said, when they leave here, nobody will remember the information. They'll remember how the event made them feel. And do they have a positive feeling or not? And that's when he said, you do what you want to do. And it was a great event. And afterwards, he came to find me and he was like, that was phenomenal, and gave me great feedback. And it just was, I'm a ham. I like to be on stage. So, yeah, those are probably my two favorites.
And working for Bill Gates' ideas, how is that?
Working for what?
Bill Gates' ideas.
You mean for Microsoft?
Yeah.
It's been great. The people that I work with, I always say your job's about the people you work with, not necessarily the company. There's been ups and downs over 20 years, from a company standpoint. We went through hard times and, you don't always agree with management and stuff, but the people that I've been fortunate to work with, from my first manager who hired me, Darrell Leister out there, over the years, I've been really fortunate to work with great people who care about each other, who even when times are down, people wanting to help out, and help each other. And it's been great.
So you have interaction with Bill Gates?
No, not Bill Gates.
So, and these Microsoft products today reached everywhere and connecting and solving problems everywhere on the planet. So what do you think that worked for Microsoft to reach everywhere?
I think the thing that works is it's always been about simplifying, standardizing, so it's mass deployment. I think if you look at kind of the divergence we and Apple had, right, early on in personal computing, making it much more available, like, cost-wise, you can go out and buy a PC, a Microsoft computer that can do everything for hundreds of dollars today still. You can't do that with a Mac, and they're great computers, but it by nature is more exclusive, right? Or exclusionary. We're all about enabling everybody. And so, I think that's been the big differentiator, and a willingness, I will say, especially again when Satya came in, because we were it was getting tough prior to him taking over. But a willingness to be more open and to work with other, we work on Apple, we work on Android, we work, the number one downloaded software stuff for the iPhone is Office. And Microsoft Office. That tells you something, right? So it's, trying to be more open, work more, even with companies we compete with, we work with. So competitors I've worked with, and it's just, that's, I think, been the key, is just willingness to be open, to adapt, to change with the times, and not to be stuck in just one way of doing things.
Is it easy for you to shift yourself from one industry to other industry?
Yeah. I'm always curious. I mean, I'm an old guy. I'm 60 years old. Been around a long time, and I've done a lot of things myself in my life. Like I was a sergeant in the Army. I worked cement construction. I've worked as a counselor. I've done all kinds of stuff. So, for me, I'm always curious, and I just want to understand how people work and what they need.
And what is your driving force?
Number one driving force,
Yeah.
providing for my family.
And
Right, I'm old enough now. If it was just me, I'd be retired and I have my hobby. One of my hobbies is blacksmithing. Um, I'd be spending my days in my forge making knives and stuff. But, I still, I provide for my family. And so, um, keeping relevant, keeping up to date, that's a big driving force.
collecting these feedbacks and trying to understand, and do you have any particular experience in understanding the feedbacks that you get?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say, that actually goes back, I would say, all the way back to when I was a school teacher, right? Because each student was an individual and different classes had different needs and things, and learning how to draw out from people what's needed to adapt and change things as, to provide the best, like back when I was teaching. And a lot of that came into play when I got into technology, meeting with people, learning to understand what they need and how to best be responsive. Um, and seeking that out. And, at Microsoft, we encourage that. So, that's, just become natural and a part of things.
And communicating with computer and communicating with human beings. So what is the difference?
Well, the computer's a tool, right? The computer is a tool. So we're doing, all the buzz is about AI and chat GPT and everything. Everybody's all excited. It's a tool. It's just the latest tool, and it's fun and it's cool and it can do some amazing things, but it's just a new way of using a tool to get a job done. When you're communicating with people, it's about understanding they're a person. How do you communicate? Am I just throwing a bunch of stuff at them, or am I trying to find out what do they need?
And an English mentor or English teacher in you a long time back and today. So if you compare both of yourself, so what do you say? What is the difference?
Uh, what is the difference? Well, then I was in person, and it's with young people. I was much more energetic. I had a lot more energy. So that was a long time ago. Um, that was wow. That's about. I left teaching in 1997. So a long time ago. So much younger man, but still learning. Didn't know half the things I know now. I was much more sure of myself in all things. I thought I could do anything. Back then, I thought there's nothing I can't learn, can't do, and I had the energy to do it. Now I'm a little more selective. I understand that I don't know everything, and that there's always somebody that knows more, is better at what we do, and I just try to do the best I can.
And the experiences that you had, you worked in different places, how those different experiences are helping you to do different tasks or different jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said before, it's just, the more you change and try different things, I think that always prepares you because you never know what experience will help you with what you're doing, right? Like, I worked in construction when I got out of the Army, and I was working literally digging holes in the desert for cement, um, 12 hours a day, 10 to 12 hours a day. And it would be 115 degrees some days, and it's pretty hot. But you learn that you can push yourself and not to give up and to do what you got to do. And that's helped me even in technology where, a customer has a deadline and I need to do something, and just to put your nose down and to say, I don't have to look at the whole thing I got to get done. just get this piece done, then move on to the next and keep going. And so just little things like that. I think every experience prepares you, if you're open to it and learn lessons from it. Even when things are bad and you fail, and we teach that at Microsoft, they say fail often, fail early, failure's okay, as long as you learn from it and move on.
And Microsoft Azure Cloud Services. So it reached human beings very fast in last few years. So what you are doing in order to make that happen?
Yeah, so I don't work in the Azure area. I just know they started out modestly with a set of services. They continue to build on those. I will say this, one thing that has helped a lot is, again, they look towards management and end use and enablement around that. And as a part of that, we've embraced other technologies. So you can stand up a Linux machine and you can write, in Java or whatever, Python, we don't care. So it's all about enabling people to do what they need to do with what they want to do. And the services connect to our competitors. We host competitive technologies. We don't care. It's all about the service and enabling the best, most robust service.
And in the present job, what challenges you like to have?
The present job, my job today, what I like the most is talking to business leaders, and talking about how they can improve the employee experience to make their place a better place to work. That's what I enjoy, talking to people and saying, let's talk about high level strategic. How can you transform your organization into a place that people want to be at?
And how much change happened because of your contribution in Microsoft?
Oh, I don't know. There's lots of people. I mean, we're 150, 80,000 people. So I would say that we all have a voice. We all contribute. There's been times where I've gotten to contribute things. There's times where colleagues do. I'm just one of many voices.
And 22 years of Microsoft experience in when it comes to if next month comes. So how is that environment and how is there any change that you are being?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is, really for a field, and I work in the field, right? So I support our field sales and those teams. It's that, work from anywhere, right? I can work from, I used to travel quite a bit. And, these days, the only travel I do is up to my office upstairs in my house. And that's my travel. That's a huge
And
change.
do you have anything that in Microsoft that you didn't do that you want to do?
Um, I always, for a long time, I will say this, for a long time, I wanted to work in more of the evangelization area for the products like SharePoint and then Microsoft 365 and stuff. And I'd always had a desire to do that. Um, but it meant moving to Redmond for a long time. Uh, these days, I'm kind of happy with what I do. I really like what I do. I'm not a young guy anymore. I'm very comfortable in my role. I mean, I'm always learning. It's always changing. But it's something that I can see myself doing for another 10 years. By then they'll probably have to push me out, but it's, yeah. So I would say, I like what I do now. I really am happy with what I do.
So do you want to say anything to the Microsoft people who are watching this?
Have a great day. I talk to them. I'm going to get off this. I'm going to be on a call with a bunch of my colleagues. So yeah, it's just, you know, to everybody out there at our company, just remember, this is what I always tell people that I do talk to, younger people starting out and working. I love my job. I really do. I love what we do. I love how we impact things, but it's family first. Keeping that perspective. Be balance your hours. I know things bleed over. Don't be afraid to block time at night to make sure people aren't pinging you so you can sit with your family and enjoy each other's company. Because the more you do those things to take care of yourself as well as your job, there's always times where you're working a lot of extra hours, but the more you can do things to take care of yourself as well, the longer your career will be, because you'll have more energy. You won't get burned out. And I've been here 22 years, which is a pretty long time for an employee here. So, yeah, that'd be it. Don't burn out. Take care of yourself.
And at last, your observation about my work. Have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
Of what?
Your observation about my work. Have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
I haven't. I've just seen, like, occasionally you post like a thing in Instagram. I'm more on Instagram than I am on YouTube.
So actually, I did masters in software engineering, also bachelors in computer science and
Oh,
engineering,
nice.
and also right now I'm getting trained as a DevOps engineer.
Very nice.
Yeah, and apart from this, I'm interviewing experts like you who are already in the industry from long time, who belongs to different countries. I interviewed more than 100 plus country people, more than 500 and plus 550 interviews I did in last 2 years after my masters. So talking with computer, being in DevOps, and talking with experts like you who are already in the industry, questioning you people and trying to understand how you experienced and how you solved the problems and how you interacted with people, what I'm going to learn and how this experience is going to be helpful for me if I work in Microsoft in coming days.
Well, there you go. There you go. It's a great place to work.
So how this experience talking with experts like you is going to be helpful for me?
I think, as you talk to people, depending on the roles that you would look at and interview with, it's just understanding, how people do work here and what the expectation is. It's different from a lot of companies. In a lot of tech companies, it can be very different, a very different environment. And just understanding, how we're all about one Microsoft, how we want to put the customer first and their needs first. The people who don't last, which is a beautiful thing. And so, it's about that, and it's about learning how, we're part of a team. We're not nobody does all their stuff by themselves. It's getting others, relying on others, being able to work with them, and learning how to work with a team and be a team player.
Great. Can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Yeah. You can do whatever. Yeah. I haven't said anything that'll get me into trouble.
Okay. So do you create any content or do you share anything that do your web links you want to share with my audience?
Sure. So I manage our blog, the Microsoft Healthcare and Life Sciences website. So I'm managing 86 content publishers now as of yesterday. We were at 85. We went up to 86. And it covers everything from Azure Dev to Microsoft Teams and tips and tricks. There's all kinds of content there, not just for healthcare. And you can find it at aka.ms/HLSblog, aka.ms/HLSblog. And there's posts multiple times a week. I'm hosting a new series on there all about Viva, Midday Cafe Viva podcast. We're recording later today for Monday's release. And
I'll put the
That's it.
link on the screen as well. People who find the
Yeah,
video on
I'll put
YouTube
it in
can
the
see it.
chat here.
Yeah.
Notice I'm a very slow typist. I can't type for anything.
Yeah, got
But
it.
that's it. I actually have to go and get ready for my next meeting.
Thank you very much, Michael, for your valuable time and
Yeah,
sharing your
no, thank
valuable
you.
answers. Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, you have a great day and a great weekend. All right.
You too, sir.
Take care. Bye bye now.
Bye. Bye.